China and the United States are locked in a struggle that will shape who sets the rules of the 21st century economy. It is a contest fought not with tanks or missiles, but with chips, algorithms, rare earth minerals, and industrial policy. When people talk about a tech war, they often picture sanctions and blacklists coming out of Washington. But there is another side to the story, how Beijing is quietly building the tools it would need not just to survive that pressure, but potentially to outflank it. To understand how China could actually beat America in this contest, you first have to see how the battlefield has shifted. Over the last few years, the United States has tried to choke off China's access to the most advanced semiconductors and the machines needed to make them. Starting in 2022 and 2023, Washington rolled out sweeping export controls designed to stop Chinese companies from buying high-end AI chips, and later expanded those curbs to laptops and other systems that contain them. Allies like Japan and the Netherlands were pressed to align their own rules so that the key chip-making tools would be off-limits to China, even if they were not made in America. Those controls haven't stood still. US rules have been tightened again and again, adding new Chinese entities to blacklists and moving beyond hardware to include cloud access and even AI model weights, the trained parameters that make powerful models useful. Senior officials have framed the strategy as focusing on a narrow set of truly strategic technologies rather than a full economic blockade. As one US export control official put it, we are strictly adhering to the small yard, high fence concept in applying our export controls. Alan Estevez, US Undersecretary of Commerce for Industry and Security. Yet behind that careful phrase is a very blunt reality, keeping cutting-edge chips out of Chinese hands. In the words of a former US commerce chief, we cannot let China get these chips, period. Gina Raimondo, former US Commerce Secretary. On paper, that looks like a big American advantage. The United States and its allies still dominate the truly advanced nodes of chip fabrication, the best lithography tools, and much of the high-end design software that underpins AI and supercomputing. Even when Chinese companies manage a breakthrough, US officials move quickly. When a Chinese firm surprised the world with a more advanced smartphone chip than many expected, Washington's message was that it remained years ahead in semiconductor technology, backed by tens of billions of dollars in CHIPS Act subsidies at home. But the story doesn't end with export controls. In fact, those same controls are pushing China to double down on a path its leaders had already chosen: long-term technological self-reliance. For nearly a decade, Beijing has been pouring money into a state-directed industrial strategy aimed at reducing dependence on foreign technology. Under initiatives often grouped under the Made in China 2025 umbrella, the country targeted semiconductors, advanced robotics, aerospace, electric vehicles, and biomedicine as strategic sectors to dominate. The results are uneven, but they are not trivial. China now accounts for roughly 29% of global manufacturing value added and has become the main trading partner for around 95% of countries worldwide. That sheer industrial scale gives Beijing a powerful base to build on. In many of the sectors identified as strategic a decade ago, from EVs to batteries to parts of green energy, Chinese companies already hold leadership or near leadership positions, even as the government quietly downplays the original Made in China 2025 branding in public rhetoric. At the political level, China's leader has made technological autonomy a core national priority. Years before the latest export control battles, he called on the country's scientists and engineers to break free from foreign choke points. Self-reliance and self-strengthening in science and technology. In more recent meetings focused on artificial intelligence, he has urged what state media describes as a nationwide mobilization to build an independent and controllable AI ecosystem across hardware and software. Beijing's message is clear. The era of relying comfortably on Western technology is over. At the same time, Chinese leaders say openly that they view the US approach as an attempt to hold the country back. In a widely reported remark, A US-led campaign of containment and suppression has brought unprecedented severe challenges. That language matters because it is used domestically to justify ambitious and sometimes costly efforts to rewire supply chains, boost basic research and accelerate homegrown alternatives, not only in chips, but across the entire stack of deep tech, from quantum to advanced materials. So how, in practical terms, could China beat America in this tech war? One path is by turning today's vulnerabilities into tomorrow's leverage. The clearest example is critical minerals and rare earths, the defensive linchpin of modern electronics, electric vehicles, and defense systems. China dominates these supply chains, controlling around 70% of mining, 90% of processing, and over 90% of magnet manufacturing in some segments. In 2025, Beijing dramatically expanded export controls on rare earth elements and related refining technologies, adding more minerals and additional scrutiny for semiconductor users just ahead of high-stakes talks with Washington. Washington and Brussels saw the move as a warning shot. If the West uses chips as leverage, China can respond with the minerals needed to make those chips. Prices for key materials have already spiked at times when Chinese restrictions tightened, squeezing global manufacturers, while Beijing recently began issuing broader general licenses to ease some of the disruption. Those licenses still keep export decisions in Chinese hands and favor large, vetted companies. That control over choke points doesn't just give China bargaining power, it also creates room for the country to reshape global production around itself. When foreign firms fear that supplies might be cut, it pushes them to invest inside China or sign long-term contracts with Chinese partners. Even as the EU, Japan, and others launch their own plans to recycle magnets, diversify mining, and stockpile critical minerals, analysts warn that China's share in many parts of the value chain will likely remain dominant for years. Another front is scale, not just of factories, but of data and deployment. For many AI applications, the country that can rapidly deploy systems at enormous scale, gather real-world feedback, and iterate quickly can advance even without having the single most advanced chip. Export controls have already slowed China's access to cutting-edge GPUs, but they have not stopped Chinese firms from training large language models or rapidly rolling out AI products. The result is a race between hardware constraints and the creative use of existing resources, more efficient algorithms, larger distributed clusters of slightly weaker chips, and heavy focus on application-level breakthroughs in areas like finance, e-commerce, surveillance, and logistics. In this sense, beating the United States might look less like winning a benchmark on a research leaderboard and more like embedding Chinese digital platforms, infrastructure, and standards across the developing world. From mobile payments to e-commerce, logistics, and city-scale surveillance systems, Chinese firms are already exporting turnkey digital ecosystems bundled with financing and hardware. If those packages become attractive enough and affordable enough for countries that feel left behind by Western tech, China could accumulate enormous influence over global data flows and technical standards, even if American companies still lead at the absolute frontier of chip performance. China is also using policy tools at home to force the maturation of its domestic ecosystem. One striking development in late 2025 was Beijing's move to ban foreign AI chips in state-funded data centers, signaling confidence that domestic alternatives are finally good enough, or at least must be made good enough for critical uses. Coupled with large state-backed funds that channel capital into national champions like SMIC, YMTC, and other chip makers, these policies create guaranteed demand and shelter for local players to climb the technological ladder. Of course, there are serious obstacles. Despite a decade of investment and protection, China still produces only a fraction of the advanced semiconductors it consumes, and domestic equipment makers lag well behind global leaders in the most complex tools. Many Chinese chip makers remain dependent on imported equipment and materials that can be targeted by US or allied controls. In some segments, like extreme ultraviolet lithography, there is currently no realistic domestic substitute on the horizon. Achieving 70% self-sufficiency in semiconductors, an aspiration often cited in earlier planning documents, remains distant. But it's important to recognize that winning a tech war does not require excellence in every single component. It can also mean controlling enough choke points, standards, and markets that other countries cannot ignore you. On that front, China has strengths that are easy to underestimate: its role as the world's factory, its grip on strategic minerals, its vast domestic market, and its ability to mobilize state resources over decades, not election cycles. Meanwhile, the United States faces its own constraints. Export controls are powerful, but they are not a free tool. They can push targeted countries to innovate around them, as China has in several sectors. They can also create headaches with allies and raise costs for domestic companies. Analysts note that while chip sanctions have clearly hurt China's ability to produce the most advanced chips, the impact on Chinese AI model capabilities has been more limited than many expected, thanks to workarounds and rapid software-level progress. There is also the risk of fragmentation. If Washington pushes controls too far or too broadly, it could accelerate the emergence of parallel ecosystems, one US-led, one China-led, and a large grey zone of countries trying to navigate between them. In that world, Beijing's strategy of self-reliance and self-strengthening isn't just about security. It becomes a sales pitch. Partner with China, the argument goes, and you get access to an entire industrial and digital ecosystem that is less vulnerable to Washington's decisions. At the same time, American policymakers are increasingly candid that simply cutting China off is not enough. They talk about the need to invest at home, strengthen alliances, and make sure that their own innovation system stays dynamic. Congressional hearings, think tank reports, and business forums all come back to a basic point. Whether in chips, quantum, clean tech, or AI, staying ahead is as much about building as it is about blocking. For the United States, that means turning export controls from a defensive shield into space for domestic industry to thrive, and hoping that industry uses that space well. So if you zoom out and ask, how could China beat America in this tech war? The answer isn't a single breakthrough or a secret weapon. It is a slow, grinding shift built on 4 pillars. First, turning pressure into fuel for self-reliance, using US controls as political cover to accelerate long-planned investments in domestic chips, AI, and deep tech, backed by national strategies and massive state funds. Second, weaponizing choke points of its own, using dominance in critical minerals and parts of manufacturing to shape global supply chains, reward friendly partners, and punish those that follow Washington too closely. Third, exporting ecosystems, not just products, spreading Chinese platforms, standards, and infrastructure across the developing world, tying other economies into systems that Beijing can influence, even if US firms still lead in pure research at the very top end. And fourth, playing a long game, accepting short-term pain in areas like high-end chips in exchange for long-term autonomy, while counting on the political turbulence and alliance management challenges on the US side to slow or dilute Western strategy over time. Will that be enough? Right now, the balance is still mixed. The United States and its allies retain clear advantages in the deepest layers of the semiconductor stack, in cutting-edge research, and in the most advanced manufacturing equipment. But China has closed gaps in many applied technologies and gained extraordinary leverage in minerals and manufacturing. And crucially, Chinese leaders have framed this contest as existential. Forge ahead towards the grand goal of building a technological powerhouse. On the other side, American officials describe their approach as a targeted defense of national security, small yard, high fence for the crown jewels of technology. Those two visions are now colliding. One country determined not to be choked off, the other determined not to arm a strategic rival. In the end, winning this tech war may not look like an obvious victory parade for either side. It may look more like a world split into partially overlapping spheres of technology, with countries forced to navigate between standards, sanctions, and supply chains. But if China can secure enough autonomy, dominate enough choke points, and embed its technology deeply enough in the global system, then from Beijing's perspective, it will have achieved something very close to victory, a position where no one, not even Washington, can easily turn off the power to its rise.